300 guests filled the ballroom. White roses lined the aisle, and soft piano music echoed through the hall. I stood there in a dress I had dreamed about since I was 22, waiting for the man I had loved for 7 years. I imagined our first dance, our honeymoon, and the small apartment we planned to decorate together. Everyone smiled at me, expecting the ceremony to begin. I kept looking at the entrance, waiting for Andrew to walk in, but he never did. Then my phone vibrated. Relief washed over me. I thought he was finally explaining his delay. Instead, I read 4 sentences that shattered my entire world. "I'm sorry. I can't do this. I've always loved her. Please don't wait for me." 7 years together, reduced to 4 cold sentences. The whispers became louder. Some guests looked at me with sympathy. Others quickly turned away. I saw my mother struggling not to cry while my father sat frozen in his seat. A few relatives were furious. Others simply watched, curious to see how I would react. They expected me to scream, cry, or beg him to come back. But strangely, I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just emptiness, as if someone had pressed pause on my entire life. I took a deep breath and slowly removed my veil. I apologized for the unexpected situation and wished them a safe journey home. People later called me brave, but I wasn't brave. I was numb. I knew that if I allowed myself to cry in that moment, I might never stop. So I simply walked away. For weeks, I barely left my room. I slept during the day and stayed awake all night, staring at the ceiling, replaying every memory we had shared. I wondered when he had stopped loving me. Was it months ago? Years ago? Had he smiled at me while already thinking about someone else? I blamed myself for everything. Maybe I wasn't successful enough. Maybe I wasn't beautiful enough. Maybe loving someone too much was my biggest mistake. Then one morning, I opened my laptop and updated my resume. As I typed, I realized something painful. I had spent 7 years helping someone else build their future while quietly abandoning my own. I had declined a scholarship abroad because Andrew didn't want a long-distance relationship. I postponed my master's degree twice because his career needed stability. I changed cities, adjusted plans, and convinced myself that sacrifice was proof of love. But love should never require you to disappear. The beginning wasn't inspiring. It was exhausting. I applied to dozens of companies and received rejection after rejection. Employers questioned my career gap. Some interviews lasted only 10 minutes before ending politely. I cried after many of them. But every morning, I forced myself to get up, make coffee, and try again. I enrolled in online courses, improved my skills, and slowly regained confidence. Progress was painfully slow, but for the first time in years, I was doing something entirely for myself. Months became years. I finally received an offer from a company willing to give me a chance. I worked harder than I ever had before. I stayed late, learned from my mistakes, volunteered for projects, and kept pushing myself forward. I made new friends, traveled for work, and even learned to enjoy spending time alone. I bought myself flowers, celebrated small achievements, and discovered that being alone didn't mean being lonely. It simply meant being at peace with my own company. 3 years passed before I saw Andrew again. I was attending a business conference, reviewing my presentation notes while waiting for the next session to begin. Someone softly called my name. I turned around and immediately recognized him. He looked older, more tired, and somehow smaller than I remembered. The confidence that once attracted me had faded. Behind his glasses, I could see regret written all over his face. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he smiled awkwardly and said that I looked different. I smiled back and told him that I was. He asked about my work, my life, and whether I was happy. I answered honestly. I told him I loved what I did, enjoyed traveling, and had finally learned how to prioritize myself. He lowered his eyes and admitted that leaving me had been the biggest mistake of his life. After a long silence, he finally asked the question I already knew was coming. "Can we start over?" I looked at him and felt something unexpected. Nothing, no anger, no sadness, no lingering love, just peace. I thanked him for apologizing and wished him well. Then I smiled gently and said, "I already started over. 3 years ago." As I walked away, I realized something important. Losing someone you love can break your heart, but losing yourself while trying to keep someone else happy can break your spirit. Sometimes, the people who leave us don't ruin our lives,